James Bond. Hello, Bond fans and subscribers, and welcome to this. I've been looking forward to doing this review for a long time. My review of the first official console James Bond video game in like 14 years. 007 First Light, starring Patrick Gibson as James Bond. Oh my god. I thought 007 Legends had killed the games, but Mr. Bond is back, baby. So my god, it's been a long time since we've had any Bond content. It's been about 5 years since No Time to Die, so we're really hungry and desperate for something, and now we finally got this bad boy. I can't wait to talk about this. So for anyone who's kind of new to my channel, I am not a hardcore gamer. I've played a few games, and I've reviewed some of the other James Bond games. In the lead up to No Time to Die, I did a few reviews. I couldn't not talk about First Light. I have to. This is developed by IO Interactive, the same company that developed the Hitman games. I've not played the Hitman games, so I could go into First Light essentially fresh, you know, with a bit of a blind experience. And the whole point is that it is a refreshing take on Bond. This is an origin story for James Bond. It is a reboot in the context of the games, but it's a very cinematic looking game, and I'll go more into that in just a moment. So the plot of First Light is as follows. After a heroic act, young naval air crewman James Bond is offered to join the newly revived 00 program. But when a mission to stop a rogue agent ends in tragedy, he must join forces with his reluctant mentor Greenway to expose a deep conspiracy and stop a looming coup at the heart of the state. And this particular story does involve some technical aspects. Well, I say technical, technological aspects, such as robotics and maybe even a bit of AI, potentially. Okay, so, First Light. This fucking game, this game is amazing. I could not believe what I played when I played this game. I literally felt like I was playing through Bond 26. I swear to God. Because not only is this a fantastic reboot of the character and the story, it feels like such a cinematic experience, as a lot of games do now. They are very story-driven, and they put the story and the characters first, so then you feel more emotionally connected to what's going on. This is the new Bond movie, and I'm playing it. It's crazy to think how they developed this. It really is. I mean, in terms of the mechanics of the game, it's pretty interesting because it can be a little tricky to master. There are some intense combat, you know, combinations with the melee, and the dodging and the counter-attacking can get a little bit tricky. But once you know what to do, it's fine, because the button prompts come up on the screen all the time, and it's about knowing how quickly you can react to things. So, and in terms of the way they're choreographed, it's very impressive and very brutal at times. But I really just enjoyed playing through this game for the story. The fact that we get to see Bond as a young naval recruit in the opening scene alone, before he's then indoctrinated into the 00 program by M, and then trained as the 7th recruit, and then he is the one tasked with uncovering this big conspiracy. So it feels traditional in terms of him going on his main mission, but the first act is very different and very refreshing because we're seeing him become 00, and it's not like Casino Royale where he has 2 kills at the beginning and then bam, he's 007. No, he has to earn the number right to the very end of this story, and it is amazing. So the characters we meet along the way are also very interesting, and certainly the MI6 regulars, where we have Priyanga Burford as M, who you may remember had a very small part in No Time to Die. She was with Hugh Dennis in the lab. They had a cameo in No Time to Die. Kiera Lester as Moneypenny. She was great. She was really, really great. And Moneypenny's role is a little bit different. She's not the secretary in this. She is very much sort of involved in the running of the 00 program, where we have this other woman called Ponsonby, who's a bit elderly. She is running the secretarial duties for M, shall we say. Alastair Mackenzie as Q, surprisingly really good. I kind of see Alastair Mackenzie as a bit of an amalgamation of Desmond Llewellyn and Ben Whishaw, in terms of, like, he's an older gentleman, but he's also a tech whiz. So they've kept that aspect of Wishaw's character and Llewellyn's character. And again, the sort of banter and relationship he has with Patrick Gibson is very, very good. It's worthy to mention Lennie James, who plays John Greenway, who is Bond's mentor in this game. He starts off, obviously, not really liking him, thinking he's very cocky and arrogant and impulsive. But over the course of the story, they form a bond, no pun intended, and they form a good working relationship. And I was surprised, actually, at how much this game struck an emotional chord with me. Like I said, it feels cinematic, and cinematic in terms of the writing, because you feel so emotionally connected to these characters that you're playing. I mean, you play as Bond throughout the whole game, but in terms of Bond and Greenway, they spend a lot of time together in this game. So by the time you get to the end of their time together in the game, it actually hits very hard. I was very surprised how much I cared about what was going on. The characters that suffer the weakest are the villains, I feel. Where you have Anthony Howell as Nicholas Webb and Bart Edwards as Damien Webb. They are father and son. They don't really have the best relationship with each other. We get to know the extent of their plan, and it's sort of interesting, actually, what they want to do. I won't spoil it if you want to play the game, but their plan is really interesting, and it is quite relevant to today's world in terms of the sort of technology and kind of conspiracy, media cover-ups, all of that kind of thing. All of those kind of themes are very well executed. But just as characters, I felt they really lacked a lot of personality. I mean, Damien is the slightly more interesting of the two. He wears the gold mask. He's a bit bigger. He's a bit more physically intimidating. He looks more threatening, and you see him more than Nicholas. Nicholas is hardly in the game. He's in a handful of scenes, but he doesn't get much of a time to really establish any kind of presence. And he dresses very ordinary. I guess maybe that was the point. They didn't want to make him seem too buffoonish or too cartoonish, but I did just feel like I wanted a bit more presence from Nicholas in particular, because I felt the way he left the story was very anticlimactic. Damien was, again, the more interesting one. So maybe perhaps instead of the father-son dynamic, maybe just amalgamating it into one character probably would have worked. Although I do like the gold mask, and I think they could have made a bit more of that in the story. The action is incredible, and I feel like I'm playing through a big budget movie. Like there's car chases, there's a plane sequence, there's regular shoot 'em ups in this game. You're fighting guards a lot. I mean, you could argue it's a little repetitive, but because it felt like a film, I didn't care so much. I was just so wrapped up in what was going on and the mission. It was just really enthralling. And you can only shoot enemies if the words "license to kill" come up on screen, because Bond isn't actually a 00 yet, so technically he has to get permission. And of course it all builds to the end of the story where he does become 007, but I won't say exactly how that happens. Another interesting aspect of the game is the fact that you get to do a bit more espionage work. You get to kind of go around and bluff people and sort of do some spy work. You get to listen into people's conversations. You get to bluff people, you get to manipulate people. So I really felt like I was some kind of undercover spy in that regard. It's the closest I've ever felt in a James Bond game to actually feeling like James Bond, really, because all the other ones that I've played, you're just kind of shooting enemies for a lot of the time, which isn't a bad thing, but I just feel like they went into more detail with this game. The details in this game are great. The graphics are incredible. It looks so lifelike, and I gotta say, if this was on a cinema screen, I would be very, very pleased, and I would be very happy with the end result, and I would pay good money to see this on a big screen. 60 quid well spent. Of course, I haven't addressed the elephant in the room. Patrick Gibson as James Bond. Now, I think it's quite a gargantuan task to not only reboot James Bond, which is obviously what the next movie's got to do as well, but in terms of IO Interactive, they gave themselves quite a task here, because they had to cast a new actor as James Bond, and they're going on the younger side with this. So he's literally just come out of the Navy. He's in the game he's 26. Obviously Patrick Gibson is like 30, so he's about a year older than me. So it's an interesting route to go down, and I know that in the films Lazenby was cast at 29, but George Lazenby was already pre-established as Bond in the film on Her Majesty's Secret Service. But in this story, it's great to see Bond developing and not quite being as good as he would become later, seeing him become reckless and arrogant and kind of full of himself. But I like that, and I think Patrick Gibson is perfect. He is fantastic in this game. His performance is so good. I mean, he's an Irish actor, but he puts on a really good English accent, and just the smarm, the wit, the charm. It's all classic Bond. I mean, the way he sort of flirts with the women and cops off with the women, the way he kind of enjoys the danger, he gets off on it, and that kind of, darkness as well, where he sort of has to kill. Like, he's sort of building up to the fact that he can't get too emotionally attached in certain situations. And I think he's playing every different angle very, very well. And if they do a sequel, I'd like to see him come back and explore the more sort of colder side of Bond, because he does become a very emotionally shut off. But in this story, he is fairly emotional. There are some aspects to his character that are quite emotional, so he has to learn to channel that in order to get the job done. But I think he was a great choice for this version of James Bond. The music is also very good as well. The score does pay homage to some other Bond movies, which is very good, and there's several Bond references in the script. So there's a few lines of dialogue and there's a few cars and there's a few other things that actually reference the books as well as the movies. So this is really made for Bond fans. It really is. Oh, and lastly, Lana Del Rey's First Light song. It's a good song. I wouldn't say it's a classic, but I did really like it, and I liked the way that it worked with that title sequence. That title sequence was very Daniel Kleinman-esque. It reminded me a lot of Skyfall and Spectre in terms of the darker colours and everything. It's but there's some of the designs and the text font was very similar, of course. But like I said, this is the closest I have felt to playing a Bond movie in a game. It is really quite stunning. It's a masterpiece. This game is a real master. There are some tricky aspects to it. I did have to look up a walkthrough a couple of times to get through certain moments where obviously, because you can have the gadgets in this game. You get this thing called the Q lens where you get to use like a laser watch or exploding things. You know, there's various little gadgets that you can use, which are fantastic. I mean, going back to Q branch is wonderful. We haven't really had many gadgets in a Bond game for quite some time, so this is wonderful. This is really wonderful, and I enjoyed using all of them. So once you get past some of the puzzles and some of the stealthier aspects, you know, I mean, it's really good. There's also some climbing stuff. There's some platforming, which is similar to Uncharted, which, again, I love Uncharted, so I'm cool with that. So, again, it takes a while to get used to some of the controls and everything, and the driving segment is also really good. I can't fault this game. I can't fault it. Other than the villains, maybe. Other than some of the character development with the villains, I can't really fault this. This is a stunning game, and my God, I cannot wait for the sequel. Really hope they make the sequel, and I hope Patrick Gibson comes back. He's done a phenomenal job as Bond here, and IO Interactive should be very proud of what they've achieved, because my gosh, the next movie is going to be it's going to have a real tough job if it's going to be an origin story to compete with this. So my rating for 007 First Light is an easy 10 out of 10. So have you played First Light? What do you think? Please comment down below. Let me know. For my money, if you haven't played it, you should play it, because this is the best James Bond game I've ever played. Hands down. And that's not to dispute some of the older ones like GoldenEye, N64, whatever. Those are timeless for the period that they're made in. But for modern day gaming, this is the best James Bond game I've ever played. So, thank you very much all for watching. What did you think? Please comment down below. Let me know, and stay tuned for more reviews in the future. And please hit the like and subscribe button. So until then, I'm Pajak's Perspective. See ya.